This is the Carbon Strategy Simulator. This simulator lets you take a spreadsheet that you can download from CoinGecko or other crypto pricing websites and use that spreadsheet to test how well a strategy would have performed over a given time frame. We'll start with a super quick review of definitions and then take a look at a general example on the Link USD chart. A strategy on Carbon is made up of orders. There are two types of orders, range and limit. Range orders buy and sell over a range, and limit orders buy and sell at a specific price. For this simulation, we're going to look at two range orders because we want to compare the performance of a Carbon strategy to the performance of a UniV3 strategy, which has the same range. Step 1. Download the historical data from CoinGecko. We are using the Link USD chart. This gets me the last 5 years or so of price data. I'll rename this file linkUSD.CoinGeckoChart.csv and place it in a folder on my desktop, so that way it'll be easy to find later. Then I open up Jupyter Notebook and click on simulatorstart.ipynb. The simulator is written in Python, and right now the only way to run the simulator is to install Python and several packages. When this is fully released to the public, this will all be hosted online. No installation needed, and it should hopefully have a nicer interface. Then I scroll all the way down and ignore everything I see. We don't care about any of this at all. If you like code, Python, and math, maybe you spend some time here and enjoy it, but I'm just going to skip to the bottom where it says start information, get user input interactive, your file here.csv. We're going to change whatever's inside these single quote marks right here to the name of the file. Our file was called linkUSD.CoinGeckoChart.csv, so I get rid of the text, not the quote marks, and Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. Then we click the double arrow to restart and run all cells. So the first thing we see here is a price chart, which is made from the data that CoinGecko gave us. In this case, it tells us the price of Link once per day for the last 1,928 days, which is about 5 years. And we can see that the range here is from 0 to 1928. I'm only going to use the last 180 days for this example, but you could set the range to be whatever you want. 1,928 minus 180 is 1748. So I'll change the start date from 0 to 1748. And I can do that either by clicking and dragging this slider or by typing it in the box. After picking the time frame, I hit OK. The next section is where you tell the simulator what range we would have picked if we deposited our capital in UniV3. We do this first because most users are going to be familiar with UniV3. I'm going to adjust the sliders to pick between $6 and $8. This is because at the very start of the time frame, the price is $7. If I put my money in when the price was $7, I would pick a range that is around $7. You can make this range as wide or as narrow as you want. Then we hit OK. Now we have to pick the Carbon ranges. The default setting here is to take whatever range you picked for UniV3 and split it up into two range orders, where the bottom half is to buy and the top half is to sell. If we compare the two charts, we can see that the topmost and bottommost values are the same. I would like to have a 3% spread on either side of the spot price, $7, which is about 20 cents in each direction. And in this range, where there isn't any green or red, I don't do any buying or selling. I know that setting up a spread isn't something you can do on UniV3, but this is Carbon's flagship feature. So I'm going to set the spread to be small, just so we can see how useful even a 6% spread is. Next we tell it the bid ranges. This is really complicated, so we're just going to leave this at the default settings and talk about it in a different video. We will then set the token weights. Set these both to 50, which means that the starting portfolio will be 50% Link and 50% USDC. We pick 50-50 because UniV3 requires us to deposit 50% Link and 50% USD. On Carbon, you could just deposit one asset and the strategy will still work. But again, we're trying to keep this as similar to the UniV3 strat as possible. If you wish to start with all Link, then set the TKN to 100 and the other to 0. If you want to start all in on USD, then set the TKN to 0 and the USD to 100. But we want this initial portfolio composition here to be the same as the UniV3 position, because the purpose is to compare the performance of Carbon to UniV3. Portfolio value is 10,000. That just means you're starting with 10,000 USD worth of tokens. We set the portfolio to be 50% Link and 50% USD, so that gives us a starting balance of 5,000 USD and 710.95 Link. This number can be anything, but we use 10,000 because it's a nice number. Click OK. Then we set the protocol fees. On UniV3, right now, the routing fees for USDC to Link add up to 0.35%. For USDT to link, it's 0.35%, and for DAI to link, it's 0.35%. So we're going to set the protocol fees to 0.35%, which written as a decimal is 0.00350, because we want this to be a fair comparison. Click OK. Then we can compare Carbon to UniV3 and UniV2, and we can do UniV2 even though we didn't tell it anything about UniV2, because that's how little control users have over their funds on UniV2. We can simulate the earnings using nothing but the price chart and the protocol fees. If you choose to animate the strategy, when the simulator is finished, there are 3 products. The first is a bunch of PNGs, hundreds of them. The next is a few GIFs, which are the actual animation part, and the last is a text file, which gives you the exact numbers for your strategy. But if you don't care about having a visual representation of your strategy, then you can click no animation and the simulator will still make a text file that tells you the results of your strategy. Animating a strategy can take anywhere from 2 to 40 minutes, but the text file which tells you the result only takes about a half a second to create. But we're going to have it be animated, because animating gives you the PNGs, the GIF, and the text file. So we click OK. And nothing happens. Well, it looked like nothing happened, but something did happen. If you look in your file explorer, a new file was just made called start conditions link USD CoinGecko chart.pickle. You ever heard of a .pickle file? I hadn't. Apparently that's just a thing. So then we open up the Carbon UniV3 UniV2 visualization simulator.ipy notebook. And just like last time, we ignore everything here and scroll all the way to the bottom. The only line we care about is run simulation, start conditions, your file here.pickle. And we change the stuff inside the single quotes to the start conditions link USD CoinGecko chart.pickle that we just made. Then we click the double arrows and restart and run all cells. And then we wait for a little bit. If you open up your file explorer, you can actually see the simulator making the PNG files. So it's going to keep making files for Carbon, UniV3, and UniV2, and when it's done, it will turn all of those PNGs into nice, high-quality GIFs. Depending on the quality of the PNGs being created, it takes longer or shorter. The files we're making here are decently high quality, and we're looking at the last 180 days, which means there are going to be 180 PNGs made for Carbon, another 180 PNGs made for UniV3, and another 180 PNGs made for UniV2. So that's going to take 3 or 4 minutes. This is all being done on my work computer, which is not very strong at all. It has an Intel i5 and an NVIDIA GTX 1650, and on this computer, it took just under 3 minutes to make all the PNGs and to turn them into GIFs. So not bad. Now we can look at the magic. Let's look at the UniV2 simulation first. Unsurprisingly, the UniV2 simulation didn't really do much at all. 180 days with decent volume over this range only resulted in a 0.5% return relative to HODL. And sometimes that return was ever so slightly negative. Now for UniV3. Right off the bat, it becomes immediately clear that UniV3 earns more fees. The returns of the UniV2 simulation capped out at 0.5%. On UniV3, they cap out at 6%. That is 12 times more fees earned by UniV3. But also the losses on UniV3 are much greater. The biggest losses on UniV2 were about negative 0.2%. But on UniV3, we see dips to negative 6% relative to HODL. So UniV3 makes more, but it also has higher risk. Alright, time for the reason you're here. How does Carbon perform? The returns on Carbon over this same time frame are 40%. Which utterly eclipses every other market maker on the planet. But most impressively, look at the losses compared to HODL. Not only does Carbon maximize returns in these kinds of scenarios, the loss relative to HODL, at its lowest in this strategy, isn't even 2%. People who are familiar with AMMs will know that crab markets are basically the best time to provide liquidity. So I picked the last 6 months. This is being made on February 19th, 2023. Precisely because the market has been nearly dead flat for half a year. And this is the absolute best case scenario for people depositing capital into AMMs. So why does Carbon outperform the competition so heavily? It's because price action in our range only generates income when it results in profit. If the price moves out of our range, nothing happens. But as long as it stays inside of our range, the only time we trade is when we're making money. In the UniV2 and UniV3 examples, the profit of the protocol is defined by the fees on the pool, but in Carbon, it's defined by the gap between the buys and sells. We're going to talk more about this later, but right now I want to get to one more thing. Start conditions link USD CoinGecko chart log.txt. This is the text file that is generated by the simulator, which enumerates the exact steps taken in the simulator in extreme detail. If we look at these first two lines, we can see that the simulation starts by looking at the initial portfolio and calling this timestamp 0. Remember, this simulation was done using the one-day chart on CoinGecko, so each timestamp increment is the price change over 1 day. On lines 11 through 19, we can see the exact price of all assets involved, and we can see the specific trades that need to happen in order for our portfolio to change composition. We can see on line 19 that the arbitrageur has nothing to do, and that's because this is day 0. We just deposited and set up our strategy. No time's actually passed. On lines 26 through 37, we can see the initial portfolio composition on Carbon. On lines 60 through 71, we can see the initial portfolio composition of UniV2. And on lines 94 through 105, we can see the initial portfolio composition of UniV3. And remember, we set this scenario up so that the starting condition would be the exact same for all three protocols. And so if we compare, we can see that they are in fact the exact same. So this simulation covered 180 days of price movement. Well, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we see that the final timestamp, which is on line 21,032, is for day 180. So we can see that this strategy did in fact cover all 180 days. On line 21,046, we can see the exact prices and trades that arbitrageurs would need to make on this day in order to make money. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to say that these things will certainly occur. Starting on line 21,064, we can see all the relevant data for the Carbon position at the end of this simulation. The token balance, in this case the token we're dealing with is Link, the USDC balance, the protocol token fees balance. The protocol charges a fee on each trade. In our simulation it was 0.35%, just like UniV3. And this is how much Link the protocol collected as a part of those trade fees. Same deal here, this is how much USDC was collected by the protocol. And side note, the bank or DAO has voted to use 100% of Carbon's fees to balance the deficit. The token market price, this is the price of the token on the current timestamp. We are on the last timestamp, which is 180, which is today, February 19th, and so the price is right around $8. The portfolio value, this is the value of the USD and the Link if all the Link were converted to USD at the current market price. Next is the HODL value. This is the value of your portfolio if you just held all of the funds in a wallet and never put them on Carbon or UniV3 or UniV2 in the first place. And the last line is the portfolio value versus HODL. This is the gains you made as a percentage relative to HODL. In this case, we can see the total returns relative to HODL on this position are 39.48%, more than the 10,690 USD that is the HODL value. On line 21,102, we see the Uniswap version 2 final position. This is all of the same data in the same order, but for the UniV2 position. The big thing to note here is that the HODL value is still 10,690 because that's the value of the position if we never did anything at all. And finally, on line 21,141, we see the UniV3 summary. We can see from the visual that there were times when the UniV3 position had a 6% return, but at the end, that number was only 2.63%. And the reason that dip happened is because there were a bunch of unprofitable trades that occurred right as the price started to climb. And because the user has no control over their position, the LP had to accept those unprofitable trades. So this is the Carbon simulator. At some point in the next, hopefully, 30 days, there will be a free online hosted version of this simulator that has a whole bunch more bells and whistles and doesn't require any installation. We really want to have the simulator up and running before the launch of Carbon, and I'm not saying Carbon will be out in the next 30 days, but all the devs are currently working on Carbon, and the simulator is a prime candidate to be put on the back burner. But it'll definitely be out in the next 90 days. And if it's not out in the next 90 days, then please go to the Bancor Telegram, Discord, or Twitter and tell them how hype you are for Carbon and the simulator, and that Xeno's a big stinky liar. Alright, see you next time.